You people always think you deserve first class. The words sliced through the quiet cabin like a warning. Every head in row 2 turned. The man who said it, a white passenger in a pale blue polo, stood over seat 2 amperes with his hand gripping the headrest like he owned it. The woman sitting there did not flinch. She simply looked up, calm as marble, her silence louder than his arrogance. The captain stood nearby, jaw tight, already assuming who was right. The air tasted of authority, of money, of quiet racism dressed as policy. Before anyone could breathe, the man added, "This seat isn't yours. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here." Now, back to Dr. Naomi Ellis. She did not move. The hum of the engines seemed to fade as the entire first-class cabin watched a scene they did not want to admit was happening. Her boarding pass, perfectly valid, rested on her tray table beside a folded magazine. The captain's shadow fell across her lap. "Ma'am," he said, voice clipped, "this seat is assigned to Mr. Hale. Please relocate before we call security." Naomi's eyes lifted slowly. "Check the manifest," she said. Calm. Exact. The young woman beside her held her phone lower, recording just enough to capture the tension without getting caught. 2 rows back, someone whispered, "This doesn't feel right." Naomi's stillness drew the whole cabin inward. She had faced this tone before at 23, at 30, and now again at 38, each time from someone who thought control was a privilege of color. Her voice carried no tremor. "I will remain seated until the system is verified." "Oh." The man in the blue polo laughed softly, the sound of entitlement echoing down the aisle. "We do not need verification. We can see." The captain nodded, missing the weight of what he was endorsing. "Ma'am, you are holding up the flight." Naomi leaned back, eyes fixed on him. "No," she said quietly, "you are." A hush swept through the rows, a hush filled with recognition and shame. And in that silence, every camera light began to glow. The captain's hand hovered just inches from her shoulder, not touching, but close enough to claim control. "Ma'am, I will have to insist," he said, his voice carrying the authority of habit rather than truth. Naomi's eyes never rose from the tray table. The boarding pass sat there like a piece of evidence. "Insist on what?" she asked softly. "That I move for comfort, or that I move for color?" A ripple passed through the first-class cabin. Conversations hushed. A man in row 3 cleared his throat but said nothing. The woman across the aisle pretended to scroll through her phone, though her screen was recording. The light from it reflected off the captain's brass badge, making the space feel like a courtroom. Richard Hale leaned forward, his confidence fed by silence. "This seat was sold to me, Captain. She must have wandered up here." Naomi's head tilted slightly. "You think I wandered into first class?" He smiled. "You said it, not me." The captain exhaled hard, the kind of sigh that ends discussion before it begins. "Let us resolve this quietly." Naomi looked up at him then, her tone calm but surgical. "Quiet is what allows this to keep happening." The engines hummed low beneath the floor. A single red light blinked on the bulkhead, steady and patient. The moment stretched. A young attendant stepped closer, whispering, "Captain, the manifest shows seat 2 amperes under Naomi Ellis." The captain waved her off. "System error. Reconfirm." Naomi's gaze followed the young woman retreating toward the galley. "That is what you call it every time," she said. "An error." Richard laughed softly, the sound cutting through the tension like a slow tear. "You people love turning mistakes into movements." A few passengers gasped. One older man muttered, "That is enough." But he did not stand. No one did. Naomi's fingers rested lightly on the armrest, still as stone. She did not raise her voice. She did not plead. At 38, she had learned that rage was the language her opponents wanted. Instead, she gave them grammar measured, precise, irrefutable. "Captain," she said evenly, "call the ground desk. Ask who processed the manifest. You will find my name on every system you own." He frowned. "Ma'am." "No," she interrupted gently. "Dr. Ellis." The title settled in the air like a challenge. The young attendant returned, voice trembling. "Sir, the record is correct. Seat 2 amperes belongs to Dr. Naomi Ellis." The captain's jaw flexed. "Then the system double-booked. Move her anyway." A voice rose from behind, shaky but firm. You cannot do that. She is right. The woman holding her phone lowered it, courage catching up to conscience. You are treating her like she does not belong, and everyone here sees it. For the first time, Richard's smirk faltered. The captain straightened, forced to confront the weight of witnesses. Naomi's voice was quiet, but it carried to every seat. You wanted this quiet. Now the world is listening. The silence that followed was heavy, dense, and fragile. Somewhere near the back, another screen began to glow. The sound of truth had found its first echo. The captain adjusted his cap, the brim low enough to shadow the doubt forming behind his eyes. The calm of authority was slipping. He spoke into his radio with clipped precision. Ground control, this is Flight 721 requesting verification for Seat 2 Alpha. His voice cracked slightly on the word verification. The radio hissed, then fell silent. The cabin waited, breath held. Naomi did not move. Her hands were folded, her posture unbroken, her calm deliberate. It was the calm that comes from knowing who you are even when others do not. Richard Hale crossed his legs, leaning back as if the interruption bored him. Captain, how long must I sit next to this performance? Naomi turned her head toward him, eyes steady. Performance implies audience, Mr. Hale. You volunteered for that. A few passengers chuckled softly, uncomfortable laughter hiding unease. The young attendant from earlier stood frozen near the galley door, guilt climbing up her throat. The captain cut his radio. We will resolve this after takeoff, he said. Miss, please move to an empty seat in the rear cabin. Naomi looked up at him, expression unchanged. You are asking me to move from the seat I purchased, to accommodate a man who insulted me publicly, while you ignore the system that already confirmed my ticket. Her words were quiet, but the rhythm of them landed like small strikes of a gavel. Dr. Ellis, he started again. We must de-escalate. She leaned forward slightly. Then stop escalating. The sentence hung in the air, clean and final. The attendant hesitated, whispering to the captain. Sir, I am getting alerts from operations. They are asking why you are questioning a confirmed executive manifest. He blinked. Executive. The word froze the space. Richard's grin faltered. The older man in row 3 looked up. Naomi finally reached for her phone, unlocked it with a soft chime, and placed it on the tray table. You may continue your verification, she said, or I can. The captain's radio crackled again. A voice, calm and authoritative, filled the cabin. Captain Pierce, this is corporate operations. You are addressing Dr. Naomi Ellis, co-founder and board member of Aurora Air Group. We suggest immediate compliance and full debrief upon landing. The captain's shoulders stiffened. Every passenger turned toward Naomi as if seeing her for the first time. Richard Hale's face drained of color. You cannot be serious, he stammered. Naomi's gaze never left the captain. I asked for verification. You chose humiliation. The captain opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence that followed was louder than any apology. The young attendant stepped forward. Dr. Ellis, I am truly sorry. Naomi nodded once. Do not apologize for witnessing. Apologize for staying silent. Phones lifted higher now, recording openly. The sound of camera shutters layered over the low hum of the engines. The flight was no longer a journey, it was evidence. Naomi leaned back, her voice barely above a whisper. You wanted quiet. Now you have it on record. The captain's radio beeped again, but he did not answer. The authority in his posture had collapsed into stillness. Outside the window, the runway lights blinked in slow rhythm, as if counting the seconds before judgment. No one spoke for a full 10 seconds. The silence felt physical, pressing against every passenger's chest. Then Richard Hale broke it with a bitter laugh. So what now? Do we all kneel? He said, his tone soaked in disbelief and something uglier beneath it. Naomi turned toward him slowly, her face calm enough to unsettle him. No, she said, you listen. The captain shifted his stance, voice unsteady. Dr. Ellis, I will need to contact ground control for clarification. Naomi answered without raising her tone. You had that option 15 minutes ago. The young attendant stood frozen between duty and conscience. Her fingers gripped the service cart until her knuckles turned white. Captain, she whispered, operations confirmed the manifest twice. We are in breach of protocol. He ignored her, still clinging to the fading thread of control. This flight will depart as scheduled, he said. Naomi's gaze sharpened. Not without an investigation. The air changed again, heavier, charged. Passengers glanced at one another, some whispering, others pretending not to see. A man near the window muttered, "She is right." Another nodded but looked away when Richard turned. Naomi picked up her phone and pressed a single button. A soft chime echoed through the speakers hidden above the cabin. Then came a voice, smooth and precise. Protocol 9 initiated. Incident logging active. Cabin communications monitored for compliance. Richard's face twisted. "What is this, some kind of show?" Naomi replied, "It is accountability." The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the system synced with her command. Screens on the crew panel blinked from blue to red recording mode. The young attendant's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen that code triggered outside of corporate audits. The captain reached for his radio again, but this time the voice on the other end spoke first. "Captain Pierce, do not proceed with departure. Flight 721 is temporarily grounded for review. Repeat, do not depart." Oh. A low wave of reaction rolled through the cabin. Some passengers whispered in awe. Others looked irritated, unaware that they were sitting inside a turning point. Richard slammed his fist against the armrest. "You cannot ground a flight over hurt feelings." Naomi looked at him. "I can ground a flight over prejudice that hides behind procedure." The words struck deeper than any shout could have. Her calmness made them undeniable. The captain stood there, caught between orders and ego. "Dr. Ellis," he said finally, "what do you want from us?" Naomi leaned forward slightly. "Acknowledgement, accountability, and silence while I secure this aircraft." Her phone buzzed again. "Corporate security engaged," the automated voice confirmed. "All data preserved. Crew review initiated." The attendants looked at one another, fear mixing with relief. The young one whispered, "She just froze the whole flight." Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. She remembered being 16, told to wait outside a classroom because the teacher assumed she was in the wrong building. The same tone, the same disbelief in her belonging. It was all the same story, just higher ceilings now. She opened her eyes and spoke quietly, to no one and everyone. "Every time you tell someone they do not belong, you teach the world to forget its own humanity." The engines remained idle. The air inside the cabin felt heavier, not with heat but with history. No one dared to move. The truth was already taxiing down the runway, and this time it was not going to take off without her. The captain's radio crackled again, but this time the voice was sharper, official, undeniable. "Flight 721, this is Aurora Operations Command. Remain stationary. Ground inspection team en route. All communications are being logged." Every passenger heard it. The words fell like thunder in a sealed sky. The young attendant gasped. The captain's shoulders stiffened. Richard Hale leaned forward, trying to recapture control through volume. "You cannot be serious," he barked. "We have a schedule, a reputation." Naomi cut him off, her voice cool as ice. "Reputation is built on how you treat the powerless when you think no one is watching." The man froze, his mouth still open. Cameras glowed now across the cabin. A dozen quiet witnesses, all filming, all holding their breath. The flight that had once promised luxury was now a mirror reflecting bias, authority, and shame. The captain finally spoke, voice tight with pride he could no longer justify. "Dr. Ellis, grounding a flight has consequences. We have over 100 passengers waiting on connection. We cannot just—" Naomi interrupted softly. "You already did, when you allowed discrimination to board this aircraft before I did." The words hit like a gavel. Her calm did not just command attention. It dismantled every excuse in the room. The young attendant stepped forward, trembling. "Dr. Ellis, the system is asking for your verification code to complete the incident report." Naomi nodded. "Code Sigma 12. The attendant entered it. A short tone confirmed submission. "Report filed. Flight suspended pending review." Richard slammed his tray table upright. "This is absurd. You people always make everything about race." Naomi turned her head slowly. "That is what privilege sounds like when it is questioned." He went silent, and for the first time, he looked smaller than his voice. A woman 2 rows back, middle-aged with silver hair, raised her hand hesitantly. "Dr. Ellis, I just wanted to say, I am sorry. I did not say anything earlier. I should have." Naomi met her eyes. Silence protects the wrong side of history, but speaking now still matters. The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. Around her, other passengers shifted in their seats, uneasy but changed. The captain placed his radio down carefully, as if surrendering something more than authority. "Dr. Ellis," he said, "instructions from operations request your oversight until inspection arrives." She answered, "Then let us begin with honesty. Tell them exactly what you said, exactly how it happened, and exactly why you thought I did not belong." He swallowed hard but nodded. "Understood." Naomi's phone vibrated again. The voice of her assistant came through, calm and precise. "Dr. Ellis, legal has joined the call. We are reviewing the feed in real time." "Thank you, Nia," Naomi said evenly. "Keep the record clean. Every second matters." Her gaze swept the cabin. Every light, every breath, every fragment of silence now belonged to truth. The plane was grounded not by malfunction, but by moral gravity. Outside, the runway lights continued to blink against the night. Inside, no one dared to speak above a whisper. The story had already left the ground, carried by every screen recording, every witness, every heart that had finally learned to see. The door to the cockpit opened with a hiss, releasing the sharp scent of metal and tension. The first officer stepped out, eyes darting between the captain and Naomi. He looked young, maybe early 30s, still wearing the cautious confidence of someone who had not yet learned how power bends truth. "Captain," he said quietly, "operations is on the line again. They need a full incident report before we can move this aircraft an inch." The captain did not answer right away. His jaw flexed, his hand tight around the radio. Naomi watched him with the same calm precision she had carried since boarding. It was not anger that filled her face. It was patience sharpened by years of being underestimated. Richard Hale leaned back, muttering loud enough for half the cabin to hear. All this drama over one seat. Naomi turned her head just enough to meet his gaze. One seat represents every door that was ever closed for the same reason. You call it drama, I call it documentation. The passengers nearest to them exchanged glances. A young black couple whispered softly. She said that so calmly. A man across the aisle murmured, "She has every right." The quiet was no longer fear. It was recognition. The captain finally lowered the radio and looked at Naomi. "Dr. Ellis, operations confirms your authority. They are requesting a live statement to accompany the report." Naomi nodded once. "Patch me through." The first officer hesitated, clearly unsure whether to obey the captain or the woman who had just grounded their flight. The captain gave a short nod, surrender disguised as protocol. The radio clicked, and a voice echoed through the speakers. "Dr. Ellis, this is Aurora Command. We are standing by for your statement." Naomi spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "This morning, I boarded Flight 721 under my own name. I was told I did not belong in the seat I purchased. I was asked to move without verification, disrespected by crew, and insulted by another passenger. I remained calm, not to prove my worth, but to reveal theirs. This flight is not grounded by weather or error, it is grounded by prejudice, and that will be recorded." The voice on the radio responded, solemn and clear. "Statement received. Corporate legal confirms immediate compliance review." Applause rippled softly through the cabin, hesitant at first, then stronger, carried by relief and shame mingled together. The young attendant who had first tried to help wiped her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Naomi looked toward her. "Do not thank me. Just remember this moment the next time silence asks for your permission." The captain sank slowly into the jump seat near the galley, the weight of realization replacing command. Richard Hale kept staring at Naomi, searching for something, an apology, a weakness, maybe an escape, but found nothing he could use. Outside the windows, dawn was beginning to stretch over the horizon, painting the tarmac gold. Inside, the air had changed again. It no longer belonged to fear or hierarchy. It belonged to truth finally spoken aloud. Naomi closed her eyes briefly, exhaling the kind of breath that releases decades of exhaustion in one controlled motion. When she opened them, she looked straight ahead and said quietly, "Let the world see what happens when respect finally takes its seat." The applause faded into a stillness that felt heavier than sound. For a few long seconds, the cabin held its breath, waiting for someone to undo what had already been done. Then, slowly, the reality of consequence began to settle over every face in that room. The captain pressed the transmit button again, voice lower now, stripped of confidence. "Operations, please confirm next directive." The response came fast. "Captain, remain grounded. Compliance and security are en route for full debrief." You are instructed to cooperate fully with Dr. Ellis until further notice." The words landed like verdicts. The captain closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. Richard Hale's composure cracked. "You cannot just humiliate people on camera and call it justice," he said, voice trembling with anger he mistook for authority. Naomi turned her head toward him, her expression calm but unflinching. "You call this humiliation. I call it accountability. There is a difference," he scoffed, trying to recover his confidence. "You are making this about race." Naomi's voice stayed level. "It became about race the moment you decided a black woman could not sit beside you without explanation." That sentence struck the cabin like thunder. A passenger gasped. Another whispered, "She said it." The young attendant stood taller now, her fear replaced by quiet resolve. "She is right," she said softly. Richard looked around the cabin, expecting allies and finding none. The cameras that had once intimidated Naomi now turned toward him. The truth had changed direction. Naomi took a measured breath, then reached for her phone again. "Nia," she said evenly, "document the timestamp. Begin post-incident protocol. Flag internal review for crew conduct, passenger discrimination, and command bias." Her assistant's voice came through the speaker, steady as ever. "Logged and verified, Dr. Ellis. Legal department online and watching the live feed." The captain exhaled, the fight gone from his tone. "Dr. Ellis," he began, "on behalf of the crew, She stopped him gently. "Do not speak yet. Let the record breathe first." The phrase carried weight beyond the moment. It was not cruelty, it was clarity. Every person on that aircraft now understood the cost of assumptions measured by color and class. Outside, a convoy of airport security vehicles approached the aircraft, their flashing lights reflecting across the windows. The first officer peeked through the small circular window on the cockpit door. "They are here," he said quietly. Naomi stood for the first time since boarding. The motion was deliberate, unhurried, powerful. She adjusted her blazer, not as performance but as final punctuation. "Good," she said. "Let them see how justice boards a plane." A hush spread through the rows as she walked down the aisle. Every phone followed her, every eye acknowledging what the world was witnessing in real time. Dignity walking unshaken through the wreckage of prejudice. She stopped beside the captain's seat, her voice low but commanding. "You asked me to move to the back. Today, I am asking you to step aside." He stood slowly, eyes lowered. "Yes, Dr. Ellis." The door to the jet bridge opened with a metallic click. Cold air drifted in, along with the sound of approaching footsteps. The world outside had arrived to meet the truth waiting inside. Naomi glanced back once, her tone calm and absolute. "This flight is officially grounded, and so is every excuse that allowed this to happen." No one argued. No one moved. The only sound was the quiet rhythm of accountability, echoing down the aisle like a promise kept. The air on the jet bridge was colder than the cabin, sharp with the metallic scent of fuel and morning rain. Naomi stepped forward first, her heels landing with measured precision on the narrow floor. Behind her, the young attendant followed in silence, clutching the incident tablet like a confession she could not yet read aloud. Two airport security officers approached, their uniforms crisp, eyes cautious. One of them spoke with formal restraint. "Dr. Naomi Ellis?" Naomi nodded. "Yes, I believe you have been briefed." He exchanged a glance with his partner, then said, "We have, ma'am. Operations requested a full statement and flight audit under your supervision. Is the captain cooperative?" Naomi turned slightly toward the cabin door where Captain Pierce still stood frozen near the entrance. "He is learning how to be," she said calmly. The officers stepped aside to allow her a clear view of the aircraft. Through the open door, passengers watched from their seats, phones still raised, faces a mix of guilt, awe, and quiet respect. Naomi faced them. "Thank you for your patience," she said. "This delay is not caused by weather or maintenance. It is caused by a system that sometimes forgets who built it. Today, that reminder has landed." Her words were not loud, but every syllable carried through the cabin like wind through glass. Some passengers lowered their cameras, realizing they were no longer spectators but witnesses. The young attendant took a step forward. "Dr. Ellis," she said softly, "I want to make a statement too." Naomi looked at her with warmth but also gravity. "Then speak honestly. Not for me. For the next person who looks like me." The attendant's voice shook but did not break. When Mr. Hale confronted you, I should have stopped him. I saw your name on the manifest and said nothing. I was afraid of losing my job. Naomi nodded slowly. Fear keeps bias alive. Courage ends it. You are ending it now. One of the security officers cleared his throat. Dr. Ellis, the legal representative from Aurora Air, is requesting your confirmation to release the crew log. Authorize it, she said. Transparency is not optional. The officer typed into his tablet, and within seconds, the aircraft's internal lights dimmed again as the data upload began. A soft electronic chime echoed through the jet bridge. Richard Hale appeared in the doorway, face pale, voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. Dr. Ellis, he started. I did not mean... She turned toward him, her gaze steady. You meant every word until it cost you something, he faltered. I was frustrated. Naomi's tone stayed even. Frustration is not a license to dehumanize. You do not get to insult someone and call it misunderstanding. He lowered his eyes, hands shaking slightly. I will apologize publicly, he muttered. Naomi stepped closer, her presence calm but immovable. Do not apologize for being seen. Apologize for what you chose to see. For a moment, there was no sound except the quiet hum of the jet engines cooling in the distance. The scene no longer felt like an incident. It felt like history correcting itself. The captain approached, voice subdued. Dr. Ellis, operations is ready for your authorization to release the passengers. Naomi nodded once. Let them go, but before they do, make sure every person on that flight knows exactly why they are stepping off this plane later than planned. She turned back to the officers. Begin recording. I am ready to finish this report. As the camera light blinked on, Naomi stood centered in the frame, posture straight, eyes steady, voice clear. This is not just about one flight. It is about every space that still believes dignity can be delayed. Today, it was grounded. Tomorrow, it will rise. The officer stopped recording. No one spoke. The silence that followed was not fear. It was respect. Naomi stepped back into the cabin, the hum of the engines now a faint ghost beneath her feet. The passengers were still seated, unsure whether to stand or remain witnesses to a story that had already left the ground. The overhead lights glowed soft gold, reflecting off the chrome edges of the aisle as if the plane itself were listening. She stopped midway between the first-class rows and looked at the faces turned toward her. I want you all to hear this, she said calmly. Not for apology, for understanding. Her tone was steady, a teacher explaining a truth too long ignored. Richard Hale kept his eyes on the floor. The young attendant stood by the galley, hands clasped in front of her, waiting for permission to breathe. Captain Pierce sat rigid in his jump seat, stripped of rank but not of humanity. Naomi continued, What happened here is not new. It has happened in hotels, in offices, in boardrooms, in every place where someone's comfort mattered more than someone else's dignity. The difference is that today, the world is watching it end. Her words moved through the cabin like low thunder, shaking certainty out of silence. One passenger in the second row whispered, She grounded a plane for justice. Another answered softly, Maybe that is what it takes. Naomi took a slow breath. I did not stop this flight because of anger. I stopped it because power without reflection becomes violence, even when spoken politely. The corporate radio came alive again. A calm female voice filled the air. Dr. Ellis, this is Aurora Command. The compliance team has confirmed your statement and reviewed the footage. Authorization is granted for immediate disciplinary suspension of involved crew and full incident release to the press. Gasps rippled through the passengers. The captain's eyes closed as the words reached him. Dr. Ellis, the voice continued, thank you for your leadership and restraint. The company will issue an official statement acknowledging this incident and your intervention. Naomi looked toward the cockpit door, her voice low but resolute. Leadership is not restraint. It is responsibility. The young attendant whispered, They are really publishing this? Naomi turned to her. Yes. The truth only heals when it is shared. The security officer stepped closer, speaking quietly to the captain, informing him of his suspension pending investigation. He nodded once, his face unreadable. Richard Hale shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Dr. Ellis, he began, please, I do not want my name in that report. Naomi looked at him. Then you should have thought about that before you created the report. Hauser, the passengers could feel the weight of that moment, the final seal on a chapter that would echo far beyond this flight. The young attendant wiped her eyes, whispering, "This feels like history." Naomi replied gently, "It is not history yet. It is still happening." A soft tone signaled the arrival of the ground compliance team outside the cabin. Naomi looked once more down the aisle. "You will all be deplaned in order. But before you leave, remember this. Silence is not neutrality. It is consent." She stepped aside as the officers entered. The hum of their radios and the tap of their boots against the floor filled the air. Yet over it all, Naomi's calm presence remained the loudest thing in the room. The captain stood, handed over his badge, and said quietly, "For what it is worth, Dr. Ellis, I understand now." She nodded once. "Then make sure you do not forget." The door to the jet bridge opened again, and light from the morning sun spilled into the cabin. It was not a spotlight. It was a reckoning. Passengers began to rise one by one, gathering their belongings in silence. The scrape of luggage against the floor and the rustle of coats were the only sounds breaking the air. Naomi remained where she was, standing in the center aisle as if she were guarding something invisible. The light from the open jet bridge washed across her face, soft yet deliberate, like daylight meeting truth for the first time. The first passenger to pass her was the woman with silver hair who had apologized earlier. She paused beside Naomi, voice trembling. "Dr. Ellis, thank you. You reminded me of something I had forgotten, that silence can be violence." Naomi met her eyes and said gently, "It only becomes violence when we keep choosing it." The woman nodded, tears brimming, before walking toward the door. One by one, others followed. Some avoided eye contact. Some whispered words of respect. Some simply nodded, the weight of realization pressing their shoulders lower. Richard Hale stood last among them, his arrogance drained to something that resembled regret. He stepped forward, hesitating beside Naomi. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "I thought the world worked one way. I was wrong." Naomi's expression did not soften, but it did not harden either. "The world does not change because we admit guilt," she replied. "It changes when we stop repeating it." He nodded slowly and left without another word. The cabin grew emptier until only the crew and Naomi remained. The young attendant approached, holding a digital tablet with trembling hands. "Dr. Ellis," she said softly, "the official compliance officers need your biometric confirmation to finalize the incident record." Naomi pressed her thumb against the scanner. A tone confirmed the action. "Record sealed," the system announced. The captain stood near the galley, eyes lowered. "Dr. Ellis," he said, "I want to apologize." She regarded him with calm precision. "Apologies are words. Accountability is action. Which will you choose?" He hesitated, then nodded once. "Action." "Then start by remembering that respect is not protocol, it is instinct," she said. "Learn it, or someone else will teach it again." Outside, the sound of footsteps echoed along the jet bridge. Compliance officers entered, carrying clipboards and cameras. They began photographing the cockpit, the seats, the safe where the passenger manifest was stored. Every flash of light felt like a cleansing. The young attendant looked toward Naomi again. "They said Aurora Command wants to debrief with you directly. Should I connect the call?" Naomi nodded. "Patch it through." A moment later, a calm voice filled the cabin speakers. "Dr. Ellis, this is Director Patel from Aurora Command. We are live. The footage is now trending on multiple networks. You handled this with absolute discipline. Public response is overwhelmingly in support." Naomi did not smile. "Support does not erase what caused it. I want a policy review, mandatory bias retraining for all senior crew, and disciplinary hearings broadcast internally." "Understood," the director replied. "We will begin immediately." The captain glanced up, startled by her authority now echoed from the highest level. Naomi looked back at him and said evenly, "This aircraft will depart again, but not until every person who steps aboard knows what justice sounds like at 30,000 feet." She turned toward the exit, her voice carrying through the empty cabin. "We are done flying blind." The engines outside were silent, but the message had already taken flight, spreading from phone screens to newsrooms, from one act of prejudice to 1,000 acts of reckoning. The story of Flight 721 was no longer about delay. It was about arrival of truth, of courage, of consequence. Naomi stepped off the jet bridge into a hush that did not feel like calm but consequence. Passengers had already spoken, cameras were still recording, and truth had outgrown the cabin. The young attendant followed her, the captain a few steps behind. both silent in the wake of authority redefined. A corporate deputy met them at the gate. "Dr. Ellis, millions are watching. The board requests a statement." Naomi's voice was steady. "Let them watch. I will not perform. Truth is enough." The deputy nodded. "Suspensions have been issued." "Do you confirm?" Naomi answered. "Confirmed. Quiet accountability, not spectacle." The captain approached slowly, voice rough. "Dr. Ellis, I was wrong." She looked at him. "Then learn the difference between power and respect. One is granted, the other is earned." Reporters called out questions from the corridor. "Is this the end of Flight 721? Naomi turned toward them, her tone calm and absolute. "No, it is the beginning. We grounded a plane, and a lie. Dignity is not negotiable." The cameras fell silent. The young attendant whispered, "They are calling this the Aurora Stand." Naomi half smiled. "Names fade. Change must not." She glanced back at the aircraft, gleaming under morning light. "Every generation has its runway," she said softly. "Today, we finally took off." Then she walked forward, leaving the noise behind and carrying the weight of change with her. Naomi paused at the terminal window, watching the grounded aircraft glisten beneath the rising Sunday. Reporters' voices faded behind her. What remained was the steady rhythm of footsteps from passengers who had just witnessed transformation. She spoke quietly, more to the moment than to anyone nearby. "I did not ground that flight for revenge," she said. "I grounded it to remind us all that justice does not shout, it stands." The young attendant joined her side, eyes shining. "What happens now?" she asked. Naomi turned toward her, a calm strength in her gaze. "Now, we rebuild the sky. Every flight that leaves this runway will carry proof that silence lost." She adjusted her blazer, then walked toward the exit where daylight waited like an open door. Her phone buzzed with headlines she did not need to read. The story had already taken flight without her. Her final words lingered, spoken softly yet meant for every ear. "I was never fighting for a seat. I was fighting for respect, and that journey never lands."